It's not a natural disaster. It's an artificially created disaster because we're the ones who built on the floodplain.
It took everyone by surprise, I think. I got a text message from a guy that lives in this apartment building at 4 o'clock in the morning saying Roger Street is filling up.
The peak of the high tide on Sunday night, we had the streets were backed up and up to here. It got to the top of the river bank, the embankment.
Our basement car parks, 2 of them have been inundated. One is 3/4 full of water, which is probably about 4 million litres.
By the time we got down here, it was pretty much up to here, and the doors had already buckled, so there was not really a whole lot we could do.
Last time they got the valuables out, but they left boxes and stuff they didn't want. What we found was, what that is just boxes of junk full of mud.
Climate change means these areas are going to be flooding every few years in the future.
The severe weather has worsened in parts of southeast Queensland. The situation compared to the devastating flood disaster in 2011.
Let's have a look at some of the live pictures right now coming out of Brisbane.
I think the February floods proved what a lot of us had already been saying. Many of the new high-rise developments in inner city Brisbane are not as resilient to natural hazards as the property developers had been claiming. The developers had said, yeah, the basement car parks are underground, but don't worry, we've got water pumps in. But of course the power went out and then the water pumps didn't work either. That meant that the elevators stopped working. In some apartments, even the fire alarms stopped working once the power went out. We heard stories of residents basically being trapped in their apartment because they had impaired mobilities. Every additional development down in the floodplain pushes more water onto neighbouring properties. So there's a cumulative impact that isn't really being considered when individual development proposals are getting assessed. A lot of these apartments are designed to what's called the 1% annual exceedance probability, which some people call a 1 in 100-year flood. It's not really though. It's possible for those floods to happen a lot more often, and it's also possible for the flooding to be a lot higher. That was actually a relatively minor flood in the context of what the river is capable of. The water level peaked at the Brisbane CBD at about 3.85 metres, whereas previous floods in living memory have been 4.5, close to 5 metres, and it's theoretically possible for floods to reach as high as 7 or 8 metres. And I think property developers and real estate agents have to take a bit more responsibility here, because they advertise these apartments, they tell people that they're safe, they tell people that they've been designed with flooding in mind, and then people get really taken by surprise.
At the moment there's pumps set up out on the street trying to furiously empty the water from here. The residents, and you can see the water right below me, which is still up to the 2nd floor.
You don't want to pull out the flood plan document on the day you're flooding. So none of these buildings either side of us or across the road were built when we had 2011, so it's a new thing for them.
It's revealed broader failings in terms of how body corporate legislation works and how decision making for apartments is structured as well, because in some cases the buildings don't have the flexibility to change how their property is managed or to make changes to the design or to the insurance schemes because of how it's been set up legally. Developers will submit these reports and say, yeah, we've designed with flooding in mind, it's going to be fine. And the council just accepts that. But the developers are just trying to cram as many units onto these blocks as possible. They're not really thinking about long-term flood immunity.
There's no insurance, because we worked hard to get insurance, and in September in our renewal this year, the brokers worldwide went and for all of this area, they dropped all of insurance that we worked hard. We didn't have it last time because it was in a loophole, we never could get it.
I just naively assumed that because there's been so much building going on since 2011 that there would have been something put in place to prevent that ever happening again.
We can't really engineer our way out of this problem. We've just got to recognise that the river by its nature is going to flood. We need to be banning private development on sites that are prone to flooding, not just residential, but industrial and commercial as well, and say this has just got to be green space. It's not safe, it's not sustainable to build here anymore.